Welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. In Oregon, coming off one of its biggest victories in recent memory, a shellacking of UCLA at home. We'll break that down and what it means for Oregon as they get set to head on the road for a potential trap game against Cal. Also, Bo Nix, does his name belong in the Heisman conversation as he has now strung together some terrific performances for the Ducks? But let's go ahead and get to all that plus so much more. It's time now for our opening drive, brought to you by Les Schwab Tire Centers, doing the right thing since 1952. And let me introduce the crew. Finally got the band back together again. Anthony Newman, Joey Harrington, and of course, Aaron Fentress from the Oregonian. And Aaron, let's go ahead and get started with you. I tweeted out the question. This is the best that Oregon has looked since fill in the blank, and collectively across the entire fan base, this performance against UCLA has people convinced this is some of the best football the Ducks have been playing in years.
Why do you do this to me? Why do you put me in a position I have to do this? Okay, do we not remember last year when they began the season undefeated and had a win over Ohio State? I mean, really, we're going to go that far because they beat UCLA? I'm going to say they're playing really, really well, but no, I'm not going to say this is the best they've played in years. They won a Rose Bowl just a couple years ago, and last year they beat Ohio State and they were undefeated for a while, so no.
Okay, look, I'm going to jump in here because that was kind of a pathetic opening statement. I mean, if we're in like a courtroom here, Aaron, and you say, Your Honor, here's where my case stands, and you throw that out, like you're done. You're out of my courtroom. Look, last year when they beat. I'm talking to you, yeah. When they beat Ohio State, leading into it, nobody gave them a chance. We were all talking about what they needed to do to keep it close. Why? Because they were playing really inconsistent football. Anthony Brown might be the guy, he might not be the guy. Look, you go back and even the year when they won the Rose Bowl with Justin in his senior year, what'd they throw for, 110 yards in that game? That game was won on the back of the defense and Justin's legs, right? All through Mario's career, well, and I guess maybe the year of Willie, it's been an inconsistent, who are we, what are we going to be? It looks good at times and then not. You go back to Mark, 2019, the last year of health, and then you go back. I would say this is the best that they have looked collectively since that stretch with Vernon, right? From that, and we're talking about like a full-on, this is a team that is getting better week to week to week. Now, I'm not talking about like, if you take what they have done from week 2 of the season and incrementally getting better to their performance last week, I think as a collective group, this is the best football we've seen from an Oregon team since that stretch where Vernon had them going. What'd they win? Eight in a row or something?
I think they won 6 pack games in a row, I think. And then everything, yeah. I mean, I guess it comes down to what our criteria is, but I'm going to take the 4-0 team. To me, a win over Ohio State is worth more than every win they've had so far this season against mostly mediocre competition, other than UCLA is a really good football team. So Arizona, Stanford, really, Eastern Washington, come on. BYU's solid, I'll give you that. But to me, the way they were playing in and around the Ohio State game, I just can't. And then 2019, you're dismissing 2019 like they didn't go 12-2 and win and have one of the more dominant defenses in the history of the program, allowing 18 points per game, and they won the Rose Bowl. So I can't get all excited, that excited this early. Sorry.
So you look at this win against an undefeated UCLA, Oregon now 6-0 all-time in top 10 matchups at Autzen Stadium. What does this mean for Oregon on the national stage? Because it feels like what Oregon has done lately, they've played like one of the best teams in the country, and you're starting to hear some of that chatter here now, Anthony.
Well, the Pac-12 doesn't get any respect from the national standpoint, and so really from the national standpoint, they don't care. UCLA, they're going to go, UCLA can't beat anybody. That's what they're saying. This win was big. It was big for a couple of reasons, and I think Joey's going to agree with me on this. It starts with one group with this football team, with the offensive line. They are the best offensive line group in the country playing right now and how they play. They are outstanding, and it starts there because when you run the football, you need an offensive line. When you throw the football, you need time to throw the football, to complete those passes. And Bo Nix, he's a dude, okay? He's another level defensive guy. He's hard to defend. He's hard to stop. But the offensive line, we need to do a segment just on every single offensive line that's playing because they are outstanding. So from a national standpoint, I think it shows Oregon who they are. They'll beat you up big time up front with an offensive line, and they'll beat you with the quarterback.
Yeah, I think, Anthony, your reasoning is the reason there, I want to say, is more respect right now for Oregon. Like this was the first time people have, since week one, that people have really seen Oregon play. And I think I saw that weekend they had 3.5 million viewers for the Oregon UCLA game, which kind of fell like 4th or 5th in the country. But there's 4 teams in the top 15 from the Pac-12. Right? There's 4 teams. Oregon's in the top 10, SC's in the top 10, and then UCLA and Utah are just right outside. There is some respect for the conference right now. And I think this weekend opened up people's eyes to how much better Oregon has gotten since everybody got their first viewing of them in the debacle down in Atlanta.
I'm always put in these weird positions. Listen, I think Oregon's playing really good football. There's no doubt about that. From a national perspective, I think they probably look pretty good, but you still can go back to that Georgia game. You still can go back to what the offensive line looked like last year against Utah twice, same group. You can still go back to the Oklahoma game. And then so we're looking at the tougher games they've played. They've not looked very good, but against pretty weak defenses, they've looked great. And I'm not saying they're not a good offensive line. I just don't know yet if this team still translates nationally. The defense is still a question mark. I think if they play a better caliber of team with more talent like we saw with Georgia, I think the offensive line gets handled a bit. I think they struggle getting guys open. I think Nix gets pressured, and I think the other team scores a lot of points. So I'm saying in the Pac-12, they look like one of the more dominant, complete teams. I don't know if nationally that translates yet.
But I don't know that we have to make that decision, right? I guess the question is how are they viewed nationally, right? And this is the first week where they've really cracked back into the conversation, right? The rest of the season will play itself out. Like we could sit here in week 8, whatever, and have a discussion. Oh, well, is a 1-loss team from the Pac-12 going to get it? Who cares? We don't need to talk about that. The fact is they've worked their way back into the discussion. And that's what I keep telling my oldest. It's like, is Oregon going to end up in the playoff? Like, well, I can't tell you that. But as long as you're in the discussion and as long as you're alive at the end of the season, you give yourself a chance. And whether or not they're good enough to compete with a Georgia, Ohio State, who else is in there right now? Alabama. We don't know. But they're putting themselves in a position, and they're at least being recognized on a national level, which will help get there at the end should they continue to play like this.
All right, fellas, we're just getting started. When we come back, we have got to talk more about Bo Nix. Many people feel like he is a possible Heisman Trophy candidate. Big words. We'll let you know if they have any truth to them when we come back on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time now for some excellence on the football field, brought to you by Ferguson Wellman. Ferguson Wellman taking a disciplined approach to investing. Bo Nix, here's what Dan Lanning had to say after yet another sterling performance.
I don't think anybody can sit here and watch football right now and watch our quarterback play and tell me he's not an elite quarterback, right? This guy's playing at an extremely high level. He makes great decisions for our team. Right? You can't watch a football game right now and say that guy's not elite. He's an elite competitor. He's an elite leader. He has phenomenal character. He's throwing the ball really well, and he's making great decisions. And he's humble, and I think everybody on our team is excited about his success.
All right, Joey, we heard Coach use the term elite, and it really feels like nationally the narrative has changed about the overall career arc for Bo Nix. And what has been clicking for him lately? Because he has just looked phenomenal on the field over the last 5-6 games here.
Yeah, to me, it's been, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I'll say decision making, but that's just kind of a piece of it, right? There's a comfort, there's a control, there's a elder statesman, right? There's this maturity that is out there. Whereas in week 1, like he looked deer in the headlights. I mean, it was a couple poor decisions snowballed into what turned into a catastrophic game in Atlanta. But since then, the way that he has corrected those things, the way that he has commanded the offense, the way that he has, I won't say that he hasn't thrown a bad ball, But and I probably won't say that he hasn't made a poor decision, but I can't think of one. I mean, I can't, since that seam route against Georgia, I can't pinpoint in my mind a throw or a decision that he's made where it's like, oh, that was really bad, that was really costly, he focused in, he made an egregious mistake. And I think that's the great thing about what he has done is he's never trying to, or he hasn't been trying to force anything. After game one, he, whether he had this, monumental realization or whether it's just kind of coaching and he figured it out, he hasn't tried to force anything. Sometimes it's with his legs. Sometimes it's with his arm. Sometimes it's setting up his teammates, with good balls on screen passes, putting his receivers in a position to make a play. Like, there are so many things that go into it, and he's doing it all. He's doing it with his legs, with averaging over 6 yards a carry. He's 17 touchdowns with 3 picks. I mean, he has done everything that you could truly ask for from a quarterback. And I think this is one of the few times, you hear a lot, whether it's like Mitchell Trubisky going from, Chicago to Pittsburgh, or myself going from Detroit to Miami, like, oh, sometimes it just takes a little, a new situation. Well, rarely does that work. This is really one of the first times I think I've seen somebody come from a toxic situation into a new place and really thrive. And it's really, I'm really happy to see it.
Bo Nix is the truth. And coming into this season, I had reservations because he was so average at Auburn. And you wonder if that's just who he was, sort of like with Brown, who he was at Boston College, or if he could come into his own. Now, some people made the point, well, he's going from the tough SEC to the weaker defenses in the Pac-12, and that's going to help. And I was like, I don't know if I buy that. And I don't really believe that's the reason why he's playing so well. He's just coming of age. He's just growing up. And it just proves again that sometimes guys need opportunity to develop and grow as a quarterback. And I see zero flaws with him. And I believe he's a draftable, like he's going from a guy who was a cast off from Auburn to now he's looking like a guy who should be drafted. I'm not going to say what round, but I don't see anything about him that tells me that an NFL team's not going to want to draft this kid at some point because there's nothing he can't do. And you mentioned you don't remember very many bad throws. There was the pick 6 at Washington State, but that's his only pick since Georgia. And that's something he's never been known for, is throwing interceptions. He's only had one since Georgia, and he rebounded from that to throw for 400 yards and basically win that game in a hostile environment at Washington State. So he's doing it all. And what's crazy is even when there is pressure, and the offensive line has been phenomenal, 1 sack, and that sack was really a coverage sack. It wasn't really on the offensive line, is that when there is pressure, he's gone. And when he's gone out of the pocket, he's either going to throw a BB on the run or he's going to run for the first down. He's pretty much unstoppable right now. And the thing I love most about him is his deep ball is just gorgeous. When he sets up and lets it go, it's just like, wow, look at it. Like the touchdown he threw to Franklin was the perfect deep ball where you throw it early, you throw it high, you throw it far, and you let your guy go get it. That's an NFL deep ball. I love what Bo Nix has become. If he hadn't have become what he's become, they wouldn't be where they are right now. Do I think he's a Heisman candidate? I can't go there yet, but my goodness, 71% on completions, 17 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions, 1 since Georgia. We're watching a phenomenal quarterback at play here, and Oregon's seen a lot of that in their career, in the program's career, I should say.
All right, so Anthony, you look at the Cal defense, and this is going to be a pretty stiff defensive test on the road for Bo Nix. What does he have to make sure he does to help this Oregon offense keep chugging along?
Well, let's go back a little bit. I thought UCLA had a good defense. They had a good front seven. I thought BYU had a good defense. I thought Washington State had a good front seven. I mean, you're going against Bo Nix. And as a ex-defensive player and a defensive coordinator, to play against a guy like Bo Nix is a nightmare. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're trying to cover guys down the field and it's 3rd and 15 and you look up and he's running for the first down, and he's not running for the first down, he's running for the end zone, you have a problem. When he scrambles, he's going to scramble to throw the ball, not to run, to throw. Now you're going to buy time for the receivers to get open. How do you cover Troy Franklin more than 4 seconds? You can't. It's impossible. And then the way he directs everybody, the way he's understanding the offense and changing the calls and understanding what he needs to do with the offense. And he's a team guy. I think I know everybody likes to play for him, but everybody looks close. They look like they're a close-knit football team that come together for number 10 because they know that he's the leader of this football team. As a defensive guy, I don't want to go against a guy like Bo Nix. And for Cal's defense, again, I don't care if it's Cal, UCLA, BYU, Washington State, it doesn't matter. You got to deal with the quarterback that's playing big-time football right now, and that's who he is. And he's not trying to do the whole thing. He's not trying to be Superman because he has a gigantic supporting cast around him that starts, again, with the offensive line.
All right, Joey Heisman. Is it time, or is it even fair, to possibly start lumping in Bo Nix's name into this Heisman conversation? I haven't looked too much at the numbers here, but he's on a team that keeps winning, and he's playing exceptional football. Would you put him in that top 5, maybe even that top 6?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you have to at this point. I mean, you have to include him in the conversation. Now, is it too early to say these are the 4 finalists or the 5 finalists who are going to be in New York? Of course, there's a lot of football left to be played. But with what he has done since that Georgia game, it's on par with anybody in the country, right? There's absolutely no reason to keep him out of that discussion. Now, if Oregon continues on this trend and Bo continues on this trend, what may ultimately keep him out of there is people's perceptions of that first game against Georgia, right? Can they clear that out of their mind and say, that was just, week 1, new coach, new team, on the road, and give it a pass? And I think that is what has been the toughest thing for people up to this point is not ignoring that, but turning the page and say, you know what? Bad games happen. Since then, he's been as good as anybody in the country. So absolutely, he deserves to be. Last week that was the conversation. DTR was ahead of him in the Heisman rankings, and whoever came out on top of that was supposed to be in the mix. Well, I think we know who came out on top in that one, and so to go back on that. No, he's in the mix. I'm curious to see how that Georgia game will continue to be viewed as the season goes on.
All right, don't go anywhere because when we come back, Dan Lanning, many people saying he out-chipped Chip at Autzen Stadium with some gutsy calls. We'll let you know our thoughts on the coaching staff when we come back on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
I think some of you guys might have been at practice earlier this week, and I told you don't tell anybody or I'll never let you come to practice again, right? You saw us practicing that. Appreciate it. You guys kept your lips sealed. So we knew that was something we wanted to do. We wanted to practice it in pressure situations throughout the week. We had a couple pressure kicks that we did early on, and it was there. We saw it after the first kickoff that we felt like, okay, that's the look we want. We think we got a chance for it. The second kickoff, we thought it was there as well. And then the third one, it was actually the worst look that we had, but we still felt really confident in it. It looked like there was some weather coming in, right? We felt like if there was a chance to steal a possession, it would be before the weather really hit. It turned out some weather came, but we knew in that game, especially once we received the kick, that, hey, we want to look to try to get a possession, an extra possession if we can, because we weren't going to get the ball at half.
Welcome back. Time now for our legendary moment, brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza. And how about the footballs on this one? Oregon leading 17-10, just under 11 minutes left in the second quarter. And Andrew Boyle with the surprise onside kick really changed the momentum. The Ducks would score, build a 2-score lead over UCLA. It would never look back. And so, Aaron, Ducks were playing against Chip Kelly. Of course, Chip Kelly, when he had the visor on the other sideline for Oregon, he was known for some gutsy play calls. It really feels like the Ducks kind of out-chipped Chip in this one.
Definitely, in a lot of different ways. And that, to me, was easily the most important moment of the game because it was looking like both teams were going to have their way offensively with the other team, and it was going to go back and forth. And then you go from scoring on the big touchdown to Franklin to make a 17-10, and then boom, onside kick, and you score again. Now it's 24-10. You're up 2 possessions, and the other team can't stop you. And even when UCLA did get a stop, they could never capitalize. UCLA never scored 2 times without Oregon scoring in between, so therefore you can't really come back in that situation. So that was an amazing call at that moment. well executed. And yeah, I mean, they went for it on fourth down a few times. They did some things that we know Chip is known for, especially during his days at Oregon. So yeah, they completely outcoached UCLA. They had UCLA guessing the entire game. They got some things done on offense. You can't deny it. Chip's going to always find a way to usually put up some points. He did, but defensively they had no clue. And that last touchdown toward the end, I can't remember who the back was out of the backfield on the wheel route. UCLA looked completely confused. Half the guys were playing man, half were playing zone. They were absolutely befuddled, and that was the game clincher right there.
Well, can we talk about how important special teams are, though? I mean, we never talk about special teams. It's always offense. It's always defense. And then I know Mike Bellotti always talks about special teams need to be special, back in the day. And they were special. Andrew Boyle was very special with that onside kick, and changed the direction of the game. I mean, you talk about the sidelines, 2 different sidelines now. And like you said, Aaron, first it was like, oh, okay, back and forth. Can we stop each other? And then, boom, wait, we get another possession, we get the score again. So it's I think we need to do another segment on special teams. Maybe I shouldn't say. No, I shouldn't say that. I like kickers, but we don't need to do a whole segment on special teams. But it was very important, and it was a great job, well executed by the kickoff team. So that was fun to watch.
All right, so Joey, we're 6 games removed from the debacle down in Atlanta. And you now look at this coaching staff, and specifically the offense, because a lot of people are comparing it to what you're seeing down in Miami. And your take now on sort of this metamorphosis of Dan Lanning, Kenny Dillingham, this entire coaching staff that has really seemed to kind of find their way here now.
It's incredible. I mean, this is all you could have asked for as an Oregon fan from this coaching staff, right? After, let's just say, getting their feet wet against Georgia, things could have gone in 2 very different directions. And what Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi and Kenny Dillingham and the rest of those coaches have done with this team is nothing short of spectacular. And the way they've gone about doing it too is I mean, if you sit and think about it, like Dan Lanning, this is the first time he's ever been a head coach. This is the first time he's ever been running the show, making those decisions. And Aaron, you mentioned the onside kick as the turning point. I think the hammer, the nail that really put this thing in was Dan Lanning and his clock management at the end of that, probably end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter as Oregon is driving, and the way he just kind of masterfully coordinated everything, right? Whereas Chip, incredible coach, he would just score and score and score and score and score, right? This coaching staff has really just taken this holistic approach of how to make this team better, and the way they orchestrated that second half was absolutely incredible. There is nothing there. I'm honestly kind of speechless with how well they've done since that Georgia game. I mean, I don't think anybody could have expected this type of immediate success, and in the way in which it's happened. I mean, you give them all the credit in the world. This is fantastic to see.
Yeah, there's no doubt they've done an amazing job. And like, the Georgia game, everyone likes to point to that. But I think Lanning knew going into that, his team was probably not ready for that stage. He knew what he left at Georgia. He knew what he had at Oregon. And I think he probably knew they were going to get beaten, maybe not that badly. But you come out of that and you can say, see guys, all you guys walking around here with your duck gear, you think you're special because you're a 4-star this, and you put your hat on that, and Oregon's had great success, so you think since you're here, you must be great. Well, you just saw greatness. You got your ass kicked. So here's what we need to do to become a really good football team. It's on film. I can throw it up anytime I want and show you how good you're not. And this team has responded to that, and they've tightened up everything, and now they are a much better football team. And one other point. Some people always say, don't schedule these tough games because if you lose it, it means this. No, schedule the toughest teams possible, because if you're really worth anything and you get defeated by a top 5 team, you're going to learn from it and grow from it far more than if you beat up on someone you're supposed to win. So they've taken that butt kicking and they've turned it into a positive, and they look like a completely different football team, zero doubt. I know I resisted that a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but I'm going to come around now and say that, yes, they are looking like an absolutely different football team, regardless of the opponent.
Aaron, and let me say, I know we're probably short on time and pushing up against a commercial, but like every single week, like this is you taking a global perspective, right? But every single week, there's been something, penalties, right? Or a couple weeks ago, it was penalties. After the beginning of the season, it was finishing drives. Like there's always been like one little nugget that you walk out of that game and say, this is what they need to work on better. The following week, that's corrected, right? Those are the things that you love to see from a coach, is to identify, like you said, what are our weaknesses? Where do we screw up? Where aren't we as good as we think we are? And now get better. And we've seen that every single week with this coaching staff. You couldn't ask for a better performance by those guys.
All right, when we come back, guess what? Oregon's got a pretty good receiver. Troy Franklin been balling out lately. We'll let you know what he means for Oregon and their future when we return on Talkin Ducks. All right, welcome back to Talkin Ducks. And Aaron, let's talk about receivers here. For Oregon, they've had a ton of talent across the board. We've seen guys drafted in the first round at very much every position, it feels like, except wide receiver. But Troy Franklin might change that, because there is a bona fide star in the making, the sophomore just shredding UCLA. Aaron, what do you make about him and his career trajectory here at Oregon based upon his development this season?
He's absolutely blossomed into a legitimate number one receiver. He's on pace to be the first Oregon receiver to get 1,000 yards since Dylan Mitchell, which I believe was 2018. And that was when Herbert pretty much targeted Dylan Mitchell like 80 times a game. Franklin is getting targeted a lot, but he's making tons of big plays. And not just big plays downfield, but key third and medium, 3rd and 10, whatever. He's coming up big on the sideline, over the middle, wherever Bo Nix needs to find him. He's a complete receiver. And for me, he's the most dynamic playmaker Oregon has had on the outside since Harrington. And they're very similar in a lot of different ways. Little of the thinner variety, very agile, great catch radius, very good speed, can pretty much make any catch imaginable, acrobatic or simple. They're reliable. So I love what he's doing. It's fun to watch Oregon with an explosive number one guy who can blow the top off the defense. And right now, every defensive coordinator they play has to spend a lot of time on the deep post to Franklin and how beautiful of a ball Nix throws on that play.
Well, it's kind of funny, and I think, Aaron, you will agree, because didn't you play receiver, right?
I did.
Okay. I'm making sure. I don't want to double check that. But when you watch Troy Franklin play, and you talk about take the top off the defense, because he's always getting behind the defense. But when I look at Troy Franklin, he can run all kinds of routes, the short routes, the medium routes, the crossing routes, and the go route. And that makes him dangerous. And he's a big receiver. And here's another thing that I've watched Troy Franklin do when the ball's not in his hands. He can block. He will block as a receiver. He will block for his teammates, for his running back, and for his fellow receivers. So that is big time. You talk about a guy that's going to go next level. You know, he has the size, he has the speed, but if he can block and take care of business out there, that's added to that receiver right there. Now, here's one thing that's important to understand too. What helps the passing game is the running game. So the way Oregon runs the football, it's helping Troy Franklin get open on those play actions, getting deep, because all of a sudden you have a little play action to Bucky Irvin, and all of a sudden the safety or the linebacker comes up, and there goes Troy Franklin. And Troy is so fast that he just running right past the defense, and you by the time you see what's going on, it's too late. But also, Bo Nix is putting it right on the money. He's connecting. Remember in the past with Anthony Brown, God, there was guys open, but he overthrew him. Oh, he just missed him. Now there's a connection. You know, Bo Nix is connecting with Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin is outstanding.
Yeah, to both your points, guys, like let's not forget that the Biletnikoff Award winner transferred to USC, Jordan Addison, right? Troy Franklin is only 4 catches, maybe 25 yards and a touchdown behind the Biletnikoff Award winner last year. So you guys are both right. He's doing it all right now.
All right, Joe, you've got an Oregon offense that looks nigh unstoppable right now. And they're getting set to take on a Cal team coached by Justin Wilcox that has always done a really good job of slowing down Oregon. But what do you make about the entire offense? Not just Bo Nix. What do they have to do on the road against Cal here in a game that they should win but can sometimes come up and bite you in the ankle?
What do they need to do? I mean, the simple answer is do exactly what they've been doing every week since the Georgia game. If you're going to break it down, Cal's been really good against the run this year. They've been really poor against the pass. If you're looking at it statistically, I would expect to see a few more balls to Troy Franklin, a few more balls in the air this year. But I don't think you need to deviate from what your game plan is, for the reason that we've all talked about and Anthony has hit on so much this show, is that offensive line allows you to set the tempo and to choose what it is that Oregon wants to do, right? That's what they've been able to do so far. They haven't been dictated. UCLA had were they first or second in the league last week coming into it in rush defense, and they still ran all over the place. It's because of that offensive line. So yeah, Cal's a good defensive football team up front. They're going to stop the run, or they have stopped the run for other teams. But so do I expect to see a few more passing attempts? Yeah, maybe. But with that offensive line, I don't know that you necessarily have to change for anybody.
Look, I just want to jump in here. Cal has done a pretty good job against Oregon. I think they beat them 2 years ago, 21-17, but that was with Tyler Shuck at quarterback. Last year's game was close. The goal line stand for Oregon preserved a 7-point win. And then I think 3 years ago, it was 17-7 that Oregon won. But the problem in this game for Cal, even if they do slow down Oregon a bit, is that Cal's offense is so bad that Oregon's going to get great field position. They're going to get the ball right back quickly. It's going to be too much pressure for Cal's defense to be out there for so many minutes trying to deal with this Oregon team that eventually they're going to get worn down and the dam's going to break. So I think Cal will put up a little bit of resistance here and there, but Oregon is just firing all cylinders right now. They're going to get too many good opportunities to not score, 35 plus.
All right, when we come back, Oregon's schedule really starts to heat up in the second half of the season. Can the Ducks remain a one-loss team and at least have a chance for a spot in the college football playoff? We'll let you know when we come back. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for What's Cooking, brought to you by Sam's Northwest Barbecue, located in Sherwood, just southwest of Portland. Sam's Northwest Barbecue, your source for Yoder Smokers barbecue products in the Pacific Northwest, and much more. And fellas, a relatively quiet weekend in the Pac-12, other than the fact both Washington and Oregon State improved to 6-2. The Ducks will face the Huskies at home, on the road for the Beavers in the regular season finale. You look at the schedule, and what is the most difficult remaining matchup for the Ducks for a team that's hoping to go 6-1 as you really look at this schedule here, Anthony?
Well, you got three teams to me that are left on the schedule that could give problems to the Ducks. And that's, Washington, but that's at home. You have Utah, but that's at home. And then the last game, OSU, and that's there. That's in Corvallis. And that to me that's different. That's a different style. That's a different atmosphere. And Oregon State's playing good. So if I'm looking at all these games, Oregon State makes me a little nervous, a little bit. But here, I want to look at it this way. I want to say, hey, all these other teams, you better be looking at Oregon, talking about, we have to go through Oregon if we want to do anything. We have to go to Autzen and win at Oregon if we have to do anything. We have to deal with that offensive line in Bo Nix if we want to beat Oregon. You better bring your lunch if you're going to play Oregon. Has nothing to do with the other schools. Oregon, I think their biggest opponent is themselves. If they beat themselves and make those mistakes, then they will lose. If Oregon's playing top notch, you're not going to stop them.
Wow.
Are you going to jump in here, Fentress? Come on.
I'm definitely going to jump in. Look, Oregon's playing great. I circled some losable games at the beginning of the season. You still got two huge ones remaining in Utah and Washington. Those are going to be tough games. Utah Utah lost to UCLA, but Utah just beat USC. That's going to be a tough game. They got a quarterback. They got a defense. And then Washington's going to definitely put up some yards because we know Oregon's defense can be suspect. So that's going to be, one of those kind of scary games, although I think Oregon wins that one. And then at Oregon State at the end of the year, I think Oregon's better than Oregon State, but it's going to be at Oregon State. Emotions are going to be high. That could be a game where if you turn it over a couple of times, next thing you know, you're in the fourth quarter and you could be losing. Cal and Colorado, put Joey at quarterback, me receiver, Newman at safety. Oregon probably still wins that game. I'm just exaggerating a little bit. But I do think there's some tough tests ahead. Again, as well as they've been playing, they still have only really defeated one super quality team. And so you wonder what's going to happen when they play a few more and something doesn't go their way, which usually happens at some point during an entire conference schedule. So there's some tough bumps ahead in the road for them to try and navigate.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Anthony in that the two toughest. No.
I was about to go, yes. I thought you were going to say Aaron.
No. In that the two toughest games potentially are going to be at home, right? I don't know why I don't feel Washington doesn't feel like a complete team to me, so I'm not as nervous. I wouldn't be as nervous about them. The Utah game, that's going to be a tough one, but I feel like they're going to be ready, right? 2 Utah losses in a row, playing at home. They'll be ready for that. The game against Oregon State at the end of the year is going to be huge, assuming that Oregon makes it through that. What Jonathan Smith has done in Corvallis is nothing short of fantastic and has been completely overlooked, right? Nobody is talking about a 6-2 Oregon State team, right? This is a team in Corvallis that come the end of the year, they could be looking for a fight. I don't know if I'm going to pick one, that's going to be the game, but maybe that's just, my personal experiences, coming to the forefront after a long, successful year that then you get punched in the face in Corvallis. Oh, wait, sorry. What were we talking about?
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll dive in and take a deeper look at the Cal matchup. We'll hear from head coach Dan Lanning as we continue along on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
I think anybody that turns on a TV on any Saturday night is going to realize that every week you can't predict college football, right? I'm watching film earlier today, and this game last year came down to the last 2 seconds on a 4th and 2 at the goal line, right? So we have to bring our best every single week to be able to perform to the level we think necessary and capable. Again, I've got a lot of respect for Cal. We're playing Oregon this week, right? We got to go get our best version of us. And be able to play really well. And we want to be playing better ball at the end than we are right now. So that's what we're looking for is growth, right? But this team is very capable.
All right, Joey, there you have it from Dan Lanning. The fact that Cal and Oregon very close last year, crazy things happen. This kind of has the description of a trap game. You come off a huge emotional win with a lot of energy. Now you got to travel on the road to a team that's played you very tough over the last couple of years. How do the Ducks make sure they don't trip up against the Bears?
How do they make sure? They do exactly what Coach Lanning said, which is just focus on bringing the best version of themselves. And that's the thing. We talk about it every single year, whether it's coming off of an emotional win, college game day, now we're in the top 10, we traveled, you go on the road against a team that is not very good in Cal, realizing this team almost beat you last year, beat you 2 years ago, has played you close for the last 5 years. And then the fact that we talk about this as well, every year there's somebody who loses in November, right? At the end of October. Like this is the part of the season where, and usually it's a lot of somebody's, right? We talk about, well, can a one-loss team make it in? It always works itself out because that pressure starts to build as you get later in the season. So there's a couple things working. It's that let down after a big win, knowing you're playing a not very good opponent, and that pressure that is building now that they're finally being talked about as a top 10 team, as Bo in a Heisman conversation. Those are two things that can distract you from doing what Coach Lanning said, which is just worrying about you and bringing the best version of your team to this game. That's how they're going to win the rest of the year, is simply by doing the things that they've been doing up to this point and eliminating the outside distractions.
Last week, I don't think that was a big emotional win. It wasn't like an overtime win. It wasn't a back and forth win. It was a butt whipping from start to finish. I mean, it was a domination. It really was. And so I like what Dan Lanning said. We're trying to climb that ladder. We're trying to get better every week. And it's about us, nobody else. It's about us. And if we play the way we can play, then it's going to be tough to beat us. But we have to make sure that we don't beat ourselves. Cal, give them all the respect. They're well coached. They're going to do what they do. But sometimes when you look at the picture and you go, here's a lot of dudes here, and there's a few dudes over here. When you got a lot of dudes over here, it's a lot easier. So Oregon has a lot of dudes, and so it should be a lot easier if they play up to their potential.
When we come back, we'll wrap things up. We'll give you our picks for Oregon versus Cal and let you know which Duck needs to step up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Time now for our rock solid pick, brought to you by Milan Stoneworks, bringing you the finest stoneworks in the Northwest. Oregon, a 2-touchdown favorite over Cal. Let's get to our predictions and our Duck of the day as far as who needs to step up. Aaron, let's get started with you, my friend.
I had this as a losable game a long time ago. Now, not even close. I think the only thing they need to do in terms of stepping up is just don't turn over the ball, as I've said already. I just think Cal brings nothing to the table that can really give Oregon any issues in any area of the game. And the Ducks roll with a pretty easy win, 39-17.
Wow, that was quick. I wasn't expecting it to go that quick. Okay, who needs to? Really, you don't have anything else to say, Fentress? Like, this has been like the most.
I've already talked about this game in other segments. Like, I mean, I just.
Man, okay. Who needs to step up? I don't think anybody needs to step up. I think that
just
they
show
need
up.
To show up. There you go. There's the good foresight. Just continue to be the rock for that offensive line, and you'll be able to do whatever you want against any defense, right? That is the key. I do see this, probably for the same reason that, Fentress, you saw this as a losable game early in the year. Maybe it's what Cal has done against Oregon the last 4 or 5 years. I see this as a close game potentially in the second quarter going into halftime that Oregon blows wide open, right? Maybe it's a 17-14 at halftime that turns into 41-17 or something like that. But I don't see it as a close game, but I do see moments where if they're not careful, like Fentress says, and they just throw it away and give it away and give it away, that, it could be closer than it needs to be. But this should be a good win for the Ducks.
It's got to be wrist, fingers.
Oh,
Joey.
wrist,
fingers.
Throw it away. Give it away.
Well, I'm looking at Bucky Irvin. He's going to go off. They're not going to stop him. And if you can't stop the running game, it's going to be a long day. And Oregon, for me, they win big. There's no question about it. I respect Cal. I respect their coaches. They just don't have enough players to get the job done. And Oregon is playing at a high level right now.
All right, good picks all around. I've got the Ducks winning this one easily. I've got Oregon winning by 17. I know Cal's got a pretty solid defense, but I think the Ducks are just rolling on too many cylinders offensively. I think Oregon gets the win 37-20 against the Bears on the road. As far as the Duck that stands out, I've got Noah Sewell with a dominant game being all over the field against this Cal offense. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Talkin Ducks, a big-time matchup in the Bay Area for Oregon. Can they keep the train moving? We'll let you know, and we'll break it down next week. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.